So our next speaker is Dr. Neelam Pushkar, and she's going to be talking on exenteration and when and how. Dr. Neelam, I would want you to hold on to the time because all speakers have to do justice. Thank you.
Yeah, sure, ma'am. Good evening, everyone, and thank you, Dr. Chitra, ma'am, for giving me this opportunity. And so I'll be talking about exenteration. Exenteration, we all know, involves removal of entire content of the orbit, including periorbita, appendages, eyelids, and surrounding skin also sometimes. Though it's a life-saving procedure, but it's quite disfiguring surgery, as you can see here. It is performed by a trained oculoplastic surgeon. So since we want to avoid exenteration, and with the better understanding of chemotherapeutic drugs and use of new adjuvant chemotherapy for chemo reducing the tumor, which allows the conservative surgery. So in orbital diseases also, there are some case scenarios where we try to, chemo reduce, like in eyelid malignancy, in squamous cell carcinoma, sebaceous cell carcinoma with limited anterior orbital involvement. We have seen very good response and we've been able to salvage the globe. Then lacrimal gland tumor with limited soft tissue infiltration. Then of course, retinoblastoma with orbital invasion. We are not doing exenteration at all, Then in patients like orbital rhabdomyosarcoma and lymphomas, our role is just to do biopsy and rest of the things is taken care of by the oncologist people. Exenteration. So coming to the indications of upfront exenteration, eyelid malignancies with extensive orbital involvement, melanomas, we know they are not chemosensitive. So if there is orbital invasion, it's better to do upfront exenteration. Then lacrimal gland tumor or any other malignancy where there is diffuse tissue infiltration or apical involvement, malignancy that progresses, despite your chemotherapy, or where chemotherapy cannot be administered, like in old patients. Then necrotizing infections, especially mucormycosis, and rarely we do exenteration nowadays in invasive aspergillosis, because we know that the results with voriconazole is very good. These are some patients, as you can see, extensive malignancy with maggots, neglected patient underwent exenteration. This is another patient with melanoma with orbital invasion. This is a young patient during COVID time. He came with, the sinus and the cheek area, mucormycosis. So this particular patient underwent exenteration, which was extended exenteration, because the orbital contents along with the maxilla, whole maxilla was removed and sinus debridement was done. And this patient, you can see there is melanoma with orbital extension. So here you can see this is the exenterated socket after 3 months. It's epithelialized. So this is just to briefly show the data of these patients presenting over 30 years in RP Center. This data has been collated by Dr. Sahil Agarwal, senior resident, who is working on this paper. And this is just to show that, if you see, there are two color bars. The blue one is before 2000. If you see here before 2000, the indication was mainly intraocular malignancy, which was basically, orbital retinoblastoma. These patients no more we do exenteration. So now you can see that in last 2 decades, the commonest indication of exenteration is eyelid malignancy. And this is just to show the trend that there is a declining trend of exenteration nowadays. Coming to types, so partial orbital exenteration, as the name suggests, is basically, you can call this extended enucleation, generally done in benign lesions which are infiltrative, recurrent, large in size. Total orbital exenteration is basically when we remove whole contents of the orbit with or without preservation of eyelid skin. Then extended orbital exenteration is when we remove a part of orbital bone, and radical is when we, along with the orbital exenteration, we are taking out, say, whole of maxillary sinus or, large bulk of cranial tissue. So partial and total independently can be done by oculoplasty surgeons, but the extended and radical requires a team. This is just to show so that residents, they understand this is orbital exenteration. When you take out the wall of the orbit, this one's extended, and radical is when the whole of, say, maxilla or the cranial or, large structure surrounding the orbit is also removed. So as we know, this is a destructive surgery. Definitive diagnosis is a must in these patients. Imaging, preferably CT scan, because we want to see the bone status of the bone, if there is any erosion or defect, and we have to be prepared accordingly. We discuss with the oncologist if something can be done, to salvage the globe and important structures. Then we have to counsel the patient and also counsel the caregiver. This part is very important in exenteration because the amount of disfigurement is something which is not acceptable. So that has to be done. Then we explain about the prosthesis beforehand so that it basically then helps in reducing the level of anxiety and depression in these patients. Special consent for exenteration has to be taken because this is a destructive surgery. The need for further investigation, you have to do all the, pre-anesthesia checkup. ICU backup is also required, especially in, extended or radical exenteration. Then accordingly, you send the consults to the other specialty surgeons also. This is just to explain some steps, though I'll be showing video also. This is a skin sparing exenteration. You can see that along the just 3-4 mm from the lid margin, a cut circumferential incision is given in the skin. Sparing the orbicularis, we reach the orbital rim, and then finally, we take out the whole content and we close the cavity like this. So this is a closed cavity over here. The advantage is that this skin basically adheres with the bone and the area heals in 3 weeks time, and then patient can be given prosthesis early. Disadvantage is that the eyebrow sometimes drawn in the orbital cavity, which makes the fitting of the orbital prosthesis difficult. This is a exenteration video I'll be showing, so it's better that we understand here that we give the incision, along the orbital rim all around. We reach the bone straight away, and we, incise the periosteum with the elevator. We go in that subperiosteal space of the orbit all around. We put a clamp at the apex, and then we use enucleation scissors and we cut and remove the whole thing. So when we talk about orbital socket reconstruction, we basically refers to how to line this bare bone. Or suppose if we have done extended or say radical exenteration, then how to restore or how to fill that defect. So for total exenteration, which can be handled by the oculoplasty surgeon, we have options of either we can spare the eyelid skin where it is possible, and this heals in 3 to 4 weeks, and or we can go ahead with split thickness skin graft, but then this will increase the anesthesia time, and most of these patients are morbid. The healing in this is around 2 months, and if we leave it bare, this is the easiest way of doing it. The socket granulates and it's lined with epithelium in 3 to 6 months. Extended and radical exenteration, we have to take help of facial-maxillary surgeon, plastic surgeon, so that they raise some flap and fill in the defect. Advantage of reconstruction, as we can see, it helps in promoting the healing of the socket. It helps in early rehabilitation with prosthesis, timely radiotherapy, which can be given in these patients after 4 to 6 weeks of surgery. Disadvantages are donor site morbidity and increased surgical time. Complications of exenteration are delayed healing, especially if we are leaving the bone bare. Or they can be a bony fistula if you have traumatized the, the bone of the orbit, especially the medial orbit. They can be bone necrosis in patient with radiotherapy, infection, numbness. These are expected, especially the numbness part. Secondary procedure sometimes is required if there is, complication and there is inability to fit the artificial, the prosthetic eye. This is a patient video I'll be showing. This is a patient with recurrent adenoid cystic carcinoma, and this was a exenteration where the skin was not preserved. So you can see that the cut is all around, along the orbital rim. We are using cutting cautery. It's always better to use cutting cautery to minimize the bleeding. And straight we reach to the, the bone. And once we generally start from the, the infralateral part of it, because that is the area where the bleeding is less. And in the end, we come to the medial side of it. So after giving incision in the periosteum, we lift the periorbita, we enter the periosteal space. And whatever strong structures are there, like lateral canthus, you can see, we need to cut them. So all the strong attachment with the orbit, we need to cut, like lateral canthus, the medial canthus, and the lacrimal gland area, the inferior oblique area. So we have to basically, circumferentially, we have to go all along with the minimal bleeding, as you can see here. And we have to, this is the periosteum elevator being used to separate the periosteum from the underlying bone. And suction should also be ready. And here you can see the oblique muscle is being cut, and in the end we have come to the medial side. Now the after clamp we have cut, and the whole thing we remove out. And it's better to take out some tissue from the apex and try to have a deep cavity, because in deep cavity you can fit the prosthesis better. We pack it, and the bare side, if bone is bare visible, you can put 1-2 sutures over there. So this is how on the third day generally we remove the pack, and this you can see the bare bone and with some granulation tissue which is appearing. This is a healthy socket. These patients, they need dressing, frequent change of dressing with antibiotic for almost 2 weeks. After that, we can leave the socket open. We can advise them to use some spectacles with occluders or with a patch till the time orbital prosthesis is given. Coming to prosthetic rehabilitation, very important part of this treatment, it improves the quality of life and reduces the psychological distress. And this is done free of cost in the Department of Maxillofacial Prosthodontist here in AIIMS. And a few customized prostheses I'll be showing. This is spectacle mounted prosthesis, as you can see here. This patient underwent bilateral exentration, and if you see the spectacle, there is attached prosthesis, and this is how it appears after wearing it. It's a very lightweight, user-friendly prosthesis and quite economical. This is another customized, prosthesis you can see here in a patient with the orbital and the facial defect. So this prosthesis, basically adhesive has been used to retain the prosthesis. So depending on the defect, if it is orbital defect, we can just make the orbital prosthesis and use the adhesive. So you can see the cosmetically, though the eukosmesis is suboptimal in these patients, but at least there is something to look forward to. So this is another patient where there is orbital cavity, and along with that maxilla was also removed. And you can see that there are 2 prostheses. One is for the oral, which is taken inside from the mouth. This is the orbital part of the prosthesis, and there is a magnet which is there. So magnet is there both in orbital and the oral part of the prosthesis, and it helps in keeping it in place. So this is how the patient looks after wearing the prosthesis. So take-home message is that orbital exentration is a mutilating surgical procedure. Definitive tissue diagnosis is mandatory in these patients. Preoperative special consent and counseling is very important, both of the patient and caregiver. And patient has to be explained that despite such a destructive surgery, the disease might recur. Then there is a need to, follow up and have further treatment. And it is definitely a teamwork. I would like to acknowledge contribution of all these doctors who helped me in, preparing this talk. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Neelam. I have a question for you, Dr. Santosh. When would you decide on a lid sparing procedure or a lid involving one?
Well, it depends on, I think, the indication. If the eyelid is already completely involved, then there is no way you can spare the lid. But if it's primarily an orbital tumor for which you're doing orbital exentration, then I would always like to spare the lid so that I can get a primary closure, and patient rehabilitation and further fitting of the prosthesis becomes much accelerated, and patient remains comfortable. But if the lid is completely involved, there is no skin to spare, then you can do a flap, temporal flap. That would be the safest way to close the defect.
Dr. Vidya, you have a question?
If we leave the socket to granulate by itself, is the incidence of sinoantral fistula high? Or
yes, it is high, and also it takes about 6 months and a lot of cleaning, a lot of patient visits, or the patient himself has to douche and clean properly. Otherwise, it can cause breakdown of the socket lining, that is granulation, bleeding, keratinization, all that. So I would definitely want to close as far as possible. If that is possible, if it's impossible, then only I would leave the socket to granulate.
And also the prosthetic rehabilitation will also be a little different, no, sir, in these cases?
Yes.
You might have to give an obturator or something?
Well, you don't have to give an obturator unless there is a fistula with the sinus,
okay,
or of the palate or the nose. Otherwise, you can simply fit a prosthesis with the rim that is available. You can rest the prosthesis on the rim. You can use a spectacle mounted prosthesis, but a stick-on prosthesis, like you would give a silicone glue stick-on prosthesis that you can give with a lid sparing exentration, is not possible if you have sacrificed the skin. One more way of doing it is osseointegrated prosthesis, where you put pegs within the bone and integrate it with the bone that is available at the rim. And then that can be magnetic device which can get coupled with a prosthesis that is fitted on top.
Thank you, Dr. Santosh.